All right, folks, it's time for our next 300 Blackout video. This is a continuation of a discussion that started in the last video about function problems, and more specifically feeding problems with blunt-nosed bullets. Over the last 6 months or so, we've been using this barrel. This is a 10.3 inch Ballistic Advantage barrel. And in particular, it has had problems with two bullets. The first is the 180 grain Rainier Wedge subsonic bullet. I haven't found any combination of overall length or, we've tried magazines, I've tried different buffer weights, and haven't been able to get these guys to reliably feed. After the discussion in the comments section of the last video, I'm not so sure whether it's feed ramps or whether it could possibly be the bevel around the opening of the chamber. And we're going to get into that a whole lot more here towards the end of the video. But what I want to do first, so the other bullet we've had problems with in this barrel is the 135 grain Sierra Varminter. It is also a hollow point that has a particularly jagged and gnarly hollow point opening. And back when we did the video on this bullet, the results were very disappointing because the rough chambering and function issues we were having were also screwing up the groups, and it was just all bad. So those are our two test bullets that we're going to use to evaluate the function of another barrel. I've put my 8.5 inch Rainier UltraMatch barrel back into my upper. I was looking on Rainier's site. They don't make this barrel anymore. I guess they've gone to a new version of the Rainier UltraMatch. But this is the barrel we've used for testing for years on the channel here, and it is extremely forgiving as far as feeding goes. And back before I had switched from this barrel to the Ballistic Advantage barrel, we did some tests with this Rainier bullet in this upper with this barrel and didn't have any problems to speak of. So that's what I want to test today. The barrel is back into the upper. The only difference from the old setup is I also went ahead and put in Odinworks tunable gas block, one of their little cheap adjustable gas blocks. Because that was the problem with this Rainier barrel a little bit, is it's got a pretty big gas port, and this was an extremely gassy and loud barrel. So I've put a tunable gas block in there. I have loaded up some ammunition that I now want to test in this gun, and we'll see if we have any function problems. Once we get off the range, I am going to remove the barrel from the upper, and I want to get some good pictures so that we can compare the feed ramps and that chamber bevel in this barrel, in the Ballistic Advantage barrel. I've got an 8-inch CMMG barrel, and I've also got a 16-inch AR Stoner barrel. The 16-inch AR Stoner barrel has also been exceptionally forgiving, and it ran these Rainier bullets okay when we tested them earlier this year in that upper as well. So I've basically got two very forgiving barrels. The Ballistic Advantage doesn't seem to be very forgiving, and the reports from the last video in the comments say that the CMMG is also not forgiving with these bullets. So I've kind of got two bad barrels, two good barrels, and I'm hoping we can line them up, get some really nice views of the differences between them, and maybe come to some conclusions. Now, even back to our somewhat successful testing with this 8.5 inch barrel and the 16-inch barrel with the Rainier bullet, the accuracy was awful. So even when it seemed to be feeding okay, accuracy still sucked. So I want to bring a couple powders into the test here. For the Rainier Wedge, my shooting over the last week or so, I've got a load of 12 grains of CFE black. Is just about right for a subsonic with this bullet in my 10.3 inch barrel. So the 8.5 inch barrel, we might lose a little bit of velocity, but hopefully we'll still be in the ballpark. I'm sure it'll still run the gun just fine. So that's our first test load. I want to load it at 4 different overall lengths, from 2.1 down to 1.950 in 50 thousandths increments. So I've loaded up 20 rounds with CFE black to test. I also want to shoot Winchester 296. This will represent the faster powder side of things, right? This is a very fast powder for subsonic use. So I'm hoping that will cover both ends of the spectrum. I shot a few test rounds this morning to get our velocity in the ballpark, and I found that 10 grains of Winchester 296 with the Rainier Wedge gets us where we need to be for velocity. So I want to load up the exact same overall lengths that we did with CFE Black, 2.1 down to 1.950 in 50 thousandths increments. Now, back to the Sierra Varminter video that we did with the Ballistic Advantage barrel. I just pulled 2 loads off of that video. The first is 19 grains of IMR 4227. I've loaded up 10 of those, and 18.1 grains of Winchester 296. I've loaded up 10 of those. So I think what we'll probably do is I'll shoot a 5-shot group by hand feeding the rounds into the chamber very carefully, and then we'll shoot a 5-shot group actually using the gas system of the gun. Because our previous video with the Sierra Varminter, it made a huge difference in accuracy, whether we babied the rounds into the chamber or let them get chambered like normal. Now I've also loaded up an extra 15 rounds with the Rainier Wedge and Winchester 296, our 10 grains of Winchester 296 loads. Those 15 rounds I want to use to get this gas block adjusted. And how I'm going to adjust it is I'm going to have the suppressor on, and I want to adjust it until it just barely locks the bolt back with the Winchester 296 load. If it works with, a subsonic with Winchester 296, it'll work with everything else, no problem. And like the supers, it's going to be overgassed, but it shouldn't be terrible. So we should have, pretty smooth function going, especially for the subsonics. And for the buffer and spring, I'm going to use my JP Silent Captured spring. This does have 3 tungsten weights in it. So this is supposed to be about an H3 buffer equivalent. So kind of a heavy buffer. I'm hoping this will be shooting pretty smooth. The ammo is all loaded up and ready to go. So we've got nothing to do but go ahead and hit the range. All right, folks, I think we'll just start out the range portion right here. I have already set up the adjustable gas block, and I've already got the scope sighted in. These bullets are shooting so bad that I was not able to sight in the scope with them. I had to go inside, dig through my stockpile, and find some subsonics that I already had loaded up just to get the freaking scope sighted in. So we've got 5 rounds left of this first batch of 15. So I want to shoot 5 of them, and as I shoot these 5, the target's at 50 yards, by the way. I'm using a 300 Blackout Magpul PMag, and here's how we're going to load them. Just very slowly, a little forward assist to help get them into battery. I was expecting under these conditions for these to shoot halfway decent, but they're not. So let's crank out this first 5-shot group. Don't expect a lot, and then we'll move on. I'm shooting at the center dot. All right, that one was about a foot low. All right, let me switch targets. We'll switch over to letting the gun feed them. All right, so we're starting with the longest load of Winchester 296. These are 2.1 inch overall length. I'm not expecting much from accuracy now, right? I just hope I don't shoot my camera. But at least the function information should be worthwhile, because maybe the next bullet that comes along in this shape won't be garbage. So here we go. Earlier testing, like dropping the bolt a good portion of the time, the round would get jammed in there. So far so good there. With the Ballistic Advantage barrel, I didn't have to try hard to get it to malfunction. So we'll see how this guy runs. All right, no feeding problems, and holy crap, I actually got 5 good shots strung together there. That was a decent group. That was quite literally the exact same load, exact same overall length, exact same everything of the 5 rounds we just shot before. Those were 2.1 inches with 10 grains of 296. Ridiculous. Absurd even. All right, 2.050 is next. There we go. I definitely did not aim at the wrong dot. It hit the dot straight below the one I was aiming at. All right, 2 inches. Okay, last up, 1.950. No malfunctions with Winchester 296. So I got a storm rolling in. I don't know if you can hear it. Hopefully the windscreen on my mic is doing a decent job of keeping the wind noise away. So not taking my time here. All right, 2.1 inches with CFE black. .050. Two inches. All right, last up with the Rainier Wedge is 1.950 inches. Okay, no malfunctions whatsoever. All right, I gotta run, switch to the target. Let's shoot these Sierras and hopefully get inside before the rain comes. All right, I just felt the first sprinkles. So we're not gonna be taking our time here, but first 5, I wanna hand load them. Let's see, I need to come down on the scope. Let's go 3 minutes, see where that puts us. But yep, loading these one at a time. All right, looking pretty good, loaded one at a time. So now we're going to let the gun feed them, see what happens. Well, how that point of impact shift is certainly interesting. We'll have to think that over. Talk about that at the bench. All right, moving on to Winchester 296. First group, loaded by hand. All right, last up, Winchester 296, loaded by the gun. All right, no malfunctions at all. Let's get back to the bench. All right, first of all, these Rainier Wedge bullets are dead to me. Absolutely no accuracy to speak of. Bullets flying all over the place. I'm going to end up getting a baffle strike or something and killing my suppressor. And my experience is not unique. Other people reporting the same thing. I will say, back in my last video, the 16-inch gun shot them a lot better. And someone in the comments section of the last video had like a bolt gun with a 26-inch barrel or something, and he said they shot perfect. They shot great. But he also had an AR and it sprayed them all over the place, I think. Let me double check that comment. Yeah, Ricky, in the last video, he has a Ballistic Advantage 8.3-inch Hansen barrel, which mine's the 10.3. Said they didn't stabilize and he got an 8-foot impact circle at 100 yards. But he tried them in a 26-inch 1 in 12 twist Remington 700 and got 1 or 2 MOA out of them. So there may be very specific applications where they'll work, but it seems like for the everyman 300 Blackout reloaders, these things are junk. Feeding problems and terrible accuracy. There's no worse combination than that. So luckily I'm pretty much done with the hollow points. There's like 5 of them left in here. However, I do have most of the box of the flat points. I don't know, maybe I'll just add them to my lead scrap pile and cast some good bullets out of the lead or something. But I'm not going to waste any more time on them. They're junk. I'm probably going to delete my previous video on these because in that video I was still somewhat optimistic. And I don't want anybody to watch it and go out and buy them thinking they might work for them. But for those of you who have them and are looking for load data, that 12 grains of CFE black worked pretty well in these short barrels. The 10 grains of Winchester 296, I did hear a couple supers while we were out on the range. So maybe like a 9.7 grain, something like that would be a good place to start. Or I guess if I was getting supers in an 8.5-inch barrel, yeah, you may want to kick that down a little bit more. Maybe 9.5 grains, somewhere in that range. And I think with Accurate 1680, we were at 11.7 grains out of the 10.3-inch barrel. But as far as load data, that's all you're going to get out of me, folks, because I've had just about enough of these. On the opposite side of the spectrum, our 135 grain Sierra Varminter, looking pretty good. But if any of you guys have any idea what the deal was here, I mean, I think clearly either, the ones I was hand feeding, like I was just kind of letting them down easily into the chamber and then just giving that forward assist a couple pops. It clearly, I mean, it was in battery, of course, but maybe that bolt just wasn't quite completely locked as far as it goes whenever you slam it home. I don't know. That's really weird. It seemed to be accurate either way, right? We had hand fed and gun fed. I was shooting so fast. Like the rain was bearing down on me and I was shooting really fast. So I don't know that this is a true indication of how they're going to group. I think we can tighten this up a good bit. This might be a little closer to what we should look for. Because this was 50 yards, right? Let's not get too excited here. You put this out to 100 yards and double the size of these groups and they're not looking so pretty. But like I said, nice slow shooting, a little more attention to things. Ah man, I think this bullet has got some serious potential. And I was super happy to see that it ran awesome in the 8.5-inch gun as far as function goes. No function problems to speak of with the Rainier barrel. I'll tell you what, the next 300 Blackout video I put up is going to be the 8.5-inch barrel, testing a couple more powders with this bullet. It's going to be a serious look at this bullet with the 8.5-inch barrel. Because if you're not familiar with this Sierra Varminter, the Sierra website says that, well, this is a varmint bullet at full velocity. You put these in a 308 or a 30-06 or a 300 Win Mag or whatever and push them really hard, you get explosive expansion. But they say at 300 Blackout velocities, they hold together. So would you like to see how these guys expand into some ballistic gel at like 100, 150, maybe even 200 yards? That's what I want to test. Because one of my generous viewers sent me some ballistic gel not too long ago. And I think this is an awesome way to break that in. I can't wait to see how they're going to expand. There are several 300 Blackout hunting bullets that I'm looking forward to trying in the ballistics gel. I don't really want this to become, a ballistics gel channel. There are enough of those on YouTube. But it's going to come in really handy in certain situations, and I think this is exactly one of them. and a couple other 300 Blackout bullets that I really want to see how they'll do when we put the gel down range. All right, so onto our barrels, a closer look at our barrels. The result was exactly what I was hoping for, or what I anticipated. The Rainier barrel is clearly much more forgiving than the Ballistic Advantage barrel as far as feeding goes. And I have tried to get some up-close pictures of these, but what gets lost in the photographs or in the video are, I think, the subtle differences in angle. This Rainier and Ballistic Advantage barrel extension side by side, or you know, the feed ramps, look pretty darn similar. I mean, the Rainier is a touch deeper, but the angle seems deeper. You know, it's not as upright. The Ballistic Advantage seems just a little bit more upright. The Rainier, you know, kind of angles toward the chamber just a touch more. So in the pictures, if you can see the four barrels, the leftmost barrel, so starting from the left, you've got my 16-inch AR Stoner barrel. Next to it is the 8.5-inch Rainier UltraMatch barrel. Those are the two good barrels. So the two on the left are the good ones. Now, center right is the Ballistic Advantage, and the far right is the CMMG. The funniest thing is the feed ramps on the AR Stoner. They are crazy huge. Like it literally does look like somebody took a Dremel tool to these. This looks like I don't know, some random guy just sits at the factory with a Dremel and cuts these by hand. They're deep and they're wide. And they've got that deeper angle I was talking about that I saw with the that I saw with the Rainier barrel. Yeah, I'll try and see if I can get a picture of this. But if you kind of hold it at an angle, the angle of the feed ramp is pointing right at the center of the chamber. Right at the center of the opening of the chamber. It is the exact same way with the AR Stoner. You tilt it up until, you know, you're actually looking at the angle and it's pointing straight at the center of the chamber. You do that with the Rainier, or if you do that with the Ballistic Advantage, it's pointing almost to the top of the chamber. Hopefully this is coming across, or you guys are following what I'm saying, but it's just, the angle is just steeper. So if I do attack this Ballistic Advantage with a Dremel tool, that's going to be my guide. I'm going to try to bring that slope down, bring that angle down until I can kind of line it up and see that it's pointing toward the chamber, or, you know, toward the dead center of the chamber opening. Let me look at the CMMG. The CMMG is kind of in between. It points a little bit higher, but it's not nearly as high as the Ballistic Advantage. So I think that might be a big part of it, because it seems no narrower. The alignment inside of the upper with the little feed ramp notches, because, you know, the uppers I'm using do have the little M4 feed ramp notches, and they line up fine in both barrels. So I think that just the steepness of that angle is a big part of it. Now, the bevel around the chamber, I'm not so sure about that, whether that's a big part of it or not. The Rainier UltraMatch is almost rounded, like it is a very rounded entry into the chamber. But the AR Stoner, which was always fine for us, and which also in the comment section of the last video, lots of other people mentioned that their AR Stoner barrel was doing just fine. No feeding problems with this bullet. And it is very similar to the Ballistic Advantage. Angle looks about the same. The deepness of the cut is about the same. The angle looks similar. So I don't think that's a big part of it. Now, in the CMMG, there's almost no bevel. Very, very tiny bevel. So maybe with that barrel, that is a part of the problem. But at least with the Ballistic Advantage, that bevel looks close enough to the others where I don't suspect it. I think it's all about that feed ramp angle. And I'll tell you what, after seeing the AR Stoner and how gnarly and homemade looking those feed ramps look, I don't have the least bit of concern about going at the Ballistic Advantage with a Dremel. Because if that AR Stoner can work looking like that, I can do that good. You know, I can make it look like that. So that's kind of the situation as I see it. And the question is, where do we go from here? I think I'm going to put the 8.5 inch Rainier barrel back in the upper and do some videos with it. I'm in the mood to actually make some videos. I don't want to frickin' troubleshoot anymore. I'm sick of troubleshooting crap in 300 Blackout. I want to crank out some videos. I've got tons of interesting bullets that have just piled up on me. So I want to flush the queue, get some stuff done, enjoy 300 Blackout a little bit more. And then one day this winter, when the snow is flying and we can't get on the range and there's nothing better to do, I'll pull out this Ballistic Advantage barrel and I'll go after it with a Dremel tool. And we'll play around with it, and if the weather sucks, we'll shoot it out the window to make sure it works. That's our blizzard project. So whenever the blizzard hits this year, that'll be the project that we tackle. But because just for the time being, I don't have the motivation. I've got a brand new 6.5 Grendel barrel I want to get on, move on to, start playing with it. I've got a 6.5 Creedmoor that I'm picking up on Monday that I want to play with. I want to continue to make 300 Blackout with the 8.5 inch barrel, but I just don't want to sink a bunch of time into another godforsaken troubleshooting or experimentation project. I want to test some bullets. Oh, I forgot to show you guys my AR Stoner barrel. This is an embarrassment, to be honest with you. This barrel is ruined. I have completely screwed it up. This was such a great shooting barrel. It always did so well for us. It was carbine gas, so, you had to pick the right powders to get it to run right and all of that. But man, it was accurate. I took it to Texas, killed my first hogs with this guy. But whenever I finally decided to take it apart, I wanted to recover the flash hider. These stupid things are 75 bucks, these Silencer Co. flash hiders. I could not get it to budge. Absolutely could not get it to budge. And as you might be able to tell, I put serious freaking heat on this thing, trying to get it to break loose, and I could never get it to break loose. It's still sitting there. I got so fed up to where I put the barrel directly into the vise, knowing that it was going to get jacked up and screwed up, just to try and get a hold of this barrel enough for me to crack this guy loose, and I never did get it loose. So there's a barrel nut I'm never going to recover. I need to pull this gas tube out here sometime, but barrel nut, gas block, and flash hider are stuck on there forever. I don't remember what sort of Loctite or whatever I might have put on that dude. That was one of the first ARs I ever put together. And at the time, I was always freaked out about getting muzzle devices tight. Now I really don't. I don't even put anything on them. I just put them on there, crank it down a little bit, and call it good enough. But back then, I put some sort of magic stuff on there that got it stuck. So, all right, at this point, I am just rambling. So it's time to wrap it up. If you'd like to help support my channel, come to patreon.com/reloading. If you're going shopping this holiday season, you can check out my affiliate links down in the description. Amazon, Brownells, Natchez Shooter Supplies, Ballistic Advantage barrels, Faxon barrels. Got some pretty good retailers. If you go click on my links and then go do your shopping, they give me a couple pennies on the dollar for the referral, and it adds up. It definitely adds up over time. So I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.